Welcome back to another session of Accelerate. I'm so glad that you guys are joining us today. I want to talk about something that I think is super important, and it's not just important in leadership, it's important in a number of other areas as well. And that topic is communication. You ever had a communication disconnect with somebody and it leads to being disgruntled or frustrated with somebody, and then all of a sudden you begin to talk to them because you're upset, only to realize that it was a miscommunication? 95% of quarrels, I think, sometimes are based on communication breakdowns. So I want to talk about that today because as a leader, it's so important that we communicate with those that we're leading, that we are good representations of communication, that the people that we are leading know what's going on. And so communication is incredibly important. So let's jump into this session. I want to talk first about the 5 kinds of communication. There's a number of different types of communication. The first one is the nonverbal kind of communication. And I think this is the one that allows the most mistakes to be had. All right, nonverbal communication. This is like someone sends you an email. There's no emotion to an email. Somebody sends you a text message and there's no emotion to a text message. It can come off so harsh and it can be so misunderstood, right? I mean, you probably had that experience before. I think that's why they created emojis, is so that we could put a smiley face with it, or we could put some kind of an emotion that would help this nonverbal type of communication to be a little less harsh at times. And so, because here's what happens. Our minds will fill in the blanks. If we look at a response or we look at a comment and we don't fully understand it, your mind will fill in the blanks and start to race with all of the thoughts of what could be or what could have they meant by it. And so again, communication's important, and nonverbal could probably be the one that could foresee the most errors in the future or miscommunication. So first one is nonverbal, and we can be very proactive in that. Some people are very good writers, and they probably have a lot less problems with that. But in our nonverbal communication, we just need to make sure that we have some precautions in place to fully communicate, clearly communicate, and maybe throw an emoji on there at the end. There you go. Second type of communication is indirect communication. This is where you're not really telling somebody what you really mean, but you're hinting or giving innuendos. And probably the most common place that we see this is in marriage, right? If your wife tells you, boy, those flowers are so pretty that Barbara got. Aren't them just pretty? Boy, I bet they smelled good. That's probably indirect communication. And what she's doing is dropping a major hint to you, husband, that you need to buy her flowers. Indirect communication, these hints at what people want. We can experience this in the office with people when we don't really want to be honest about our true feelings. You can hint at things or use indirect communication and innuendos trying to prove your point. And really, we need to just be a little bit more direct with people when it comes to what we're trying to communicate to people. Another area that I find and have found over the years a communication breakdown because of indirect communication is sometimes different nationalities. It's kind of a cultural thing to be indirect in their communication. Oftentimes they're trying to do it, or they're communicating that way out of respect for you. But indirect communication sometimes can be a cultural thing as well as just somebody that doesn't have the courage or the boldness to really truly communicate what they're thinking. Women always ask questions, typically relationally. Typically, women are asking questions out of relationship. And men often ask questions out of information, desiring information. And so understanding how different people tick is super important in this area of communication. The third area of communication is direct communication, and this would be the most obvious one. This is face-to-face communication. It's like, hey, can we do lunch? You call somebody up, you sit down, you have lunch with them, you're sitting across from the table, it's direct communication. Also, maybe a phone call could be considered direct communication because you are communicating with them. With a phone call, you can't see their hand motions, their facial expressions, like you can with face-to-face, but you can still kind of hear their tones, and it's easier to understand where they're coming from than it is with like indirect communication. So fourth one is this. This may not even sound like a type of communication, but it is. Listening. Let me just say this. Those who listen often gain a lot of respect with those that they're communicating with. So many times in conversations, all we want to do is just give our side or give the ABCs to fixing someone's problem or bringing a solution. And we refuse to listen. We don't even really truly understand what they're going through. And so oftentimes when my wife comes home, she just wants me to listen. She wants to talk. She's been in an office all day, or she's had a series of phone calls that were a little bit rough, maybe in the business that she's in. Maybe somebody's complained, or she's had a bad day. When she gets home, she just wants to talk, and she wants somebody to listen. And so we have to become master listeners as husbands, but not only as husbands. Female, male, doesn't matter. All of us need to become master level listeners in leadership. Okay, if we want to be master level leaders, we need to be master level listeners and be willing to just be slow to speak and quick to listen, like the Bible communicates to us. We have raised up a generation of students that really don't like to listen. They just want to talk. They just want to be heard. And we're seeing protests and all those types of things in our culture today. People want to be heard more than they oftentimes want to listen. Listening is a skill that all of us can cultivate. So maybe you're not a good listener. Can I just tell you, you can cultivate the art of listening to somebody, making eye contact, smiling, shaking your head so that they understand that you're hearing what they're saying. Sometimes it's good to just repeat back what they've just said. Okay, I think I hear what you're saying, and you repeat back what they're saying while making eye contact and having positive facial expressions with them can be a great form of listening. The fifth and last one that I want to talk about as far as types of communication is dialogue. This is where there's multiple people involved and where you may have a problem that you need to talk through and create a solution. So now you have multiple people around a table and you are dialoguing back and forth, presenting options or presenting resolutions to the problems that you're facing. It's an exchange of ideas or options or opinions. Most people in those situations, though, unfortunately, are just waiting their turn to talk and they're not listening. So it comes back to point number 4. As leaders, we need to be good listeners. And so in those dialogue sessions, as people are communicating, we also need to be taking in what other people are saying. There's nothing more embarrassing than not listening, just waiting your turn to talk. And when it gets to you, you start speaking and they're like, yeah, that's what John just said. Weren't you listening? And so it's very important that in a dialogue communication where there's multiple people and you're trying to solve problems and address issues, that you're listening to the other solutions being presented. Now, I want to talk about common causes of communication breakdown, because there is a major breakdown. We kind of talked about it at the beginning. Oftentimes it's misunderstanding somebody or whatever. But here's some great causes of communication breakdown. The number one thing I would say is this is assuming. Assumption is the lowest form of knowledge. I think a lot of times when we see things on Facebook or we hear third-party information from people that's more gossip than it is anything else, we make judgments upon that. And so then we start communicating about that situation, and it was all based on an assumption from third-party information or whatever. We're assuming that person feels that way. We're assuming that person thinks that way, and we've never gone to them personally. A second breakdown of communication is projection, an estimate of the future or a forecast of a situation or a trend. We are trying to project what somebody's gonna say, project how they're thinking the outcome or ending. You will often quit listening. When we already think we know where somebody's going with their conversation, it's so easy to bail out on the conversation. Matter of fact, sometimes we draw conclusions and we have answers ready based on what they're saying because we projected what we think they're saying or what they're thinking, only to find out that we were wrong. So projection can be a breakdown of communication. We shouldn't project. We should listen to people, hear them out, and not respond until we fully listen. 3, withholding information. Withholding information will cause a breakdown in our communication as well. And this is very manipulative, okay? It's when it might even be a white lie, or we don't divulge all the information because we know it's not going to be positive, and so we don't give all the facts. We withhold some of them, and it's really kind of coming off dishonest, okay? So that can be a huge breakdown of communication. Let me give you a great example of this. The neighbor asks, "Hey, does your dog bite?" No. And the guy reaches over to pet the dog, and he pets him, and the dog bites him. And then the guy tells the neighbor, "I thought you said your dog doesn't bite." And he says, "He doesn't. That's not my dog." Withholding information. Does your dog bite? Nope. Get bit. It's not your dog. He withheld the fact that that's not my dog. I'm not sure if he bites or not. My dog doesn't bite, but my dog's not out here. You see how that can be detrimental in clear communication? Number 4 is dishonesty, just full out dishonesty, not even a white lie. We're just going to lie to somebody and not tell them the truth. I had a guy that I used to invest with, and he could not tell the truth to save his life. I don't even think he knew that he was lying. I don't think that he realized how dishonest he really was. And it just became very obvious and very apparent that this is not a good investing partnership, and we need to get out of this immediately because this person is dishonest. And that causes communication breakdown big time because you never know whether they're telling the truth or not. Now, let's talk about dialogue, this whole idea of dialogue and communication. What are some keys to good dialogue, good communication? What are some of the keys? Number 1, listen to what is really being said. We've already talked about this a little bit. Oftentimes we may have like these predictions or assumptions or other communication breakdowns, or we quit listening. We need to listen to the people all the way through the conversation so that we truly know what's being said. All right? Number 2, seek clarity. I think it's incredibly important at the end of a meeting that if there's any confusion or any gray area at all, that we extend the questions that we need to so that we get full clarity of what the outcome is supposed to be, of what the outcome is. Especially in a dialogue type meeting where we're trying to solve problems and there's multiple people around the table, we need to make sure that we're very clear of what is being said. If you're having marital problems and you're talking about things that have bothered you, we need to be very clear and very specific about those things. Let's give some examples so that there's clarity so that we can repair the communication breakdown. Another thing is keep control of your own nonverbals. And what does that mean? Your body language communicates more than you probably know. See, I can wave my hands, I can do this, and I don't even have to say a word. If I do this, you already know that I don't agree, I'm in opposition, I'm rejecting you. Our body language says a lot. Sitting here talking to somebody and they say something I don't like, and I roll my eyes and do one of these. This is body language that ends up affecting the outcome of the communication, because people are going to get very upset when they start seeing you roll your eyes, or you're closing your eyes, or you're not paying attention. I'll tell you this, I've had people over to the house before, and friends that stay late, or whatever, and we'll be sitting on the couch, and there's times I've flat out fallen asleep before. What is my body language saying to them? My nap time or my sleep time is more important right now because I can't even stay awake. And so our nonverbals, we need to control those because they can communicate a lot. Body language can communicate a lot. Here's another thing. For us, on the leadership aspect or end of things, We should not overreact to other people's nonverbals. There's times that we need to just ignore the nonverbals that are taking place. Maybe the rolling of the eyes, maybe the crossing of the arms, the shrugging of the shoulders. There's times that as leaders that we have to be above reproach, and we have to take the high road instead of address every single one of those types of situations with people. And certainly it depends on the situation. If it's somebody that's in our leadership team and they're acting like that, we need to pull them aside privately and we need to coach them through that. Like, hey, this isn't an attitude that we have. We're not going to communicate this way with our reactions and with our total public display of disagreement. We need to be on the same page here. So don't overreact to the nonverbals, but you and I need to be cautious of our nonverbals and make sure that we are not doing anything with our body language that causes the communication walls to be broke down. Okay, as a leader, we always want positive communication. We want good outcomes. And so that's very important. There's a great book out there by Dale Carnegie. It's one of them New York Times bestsellers, Winning Friends and Influencing People. And it's all about communication and building people up and relationships. And I think it'd be a great book for you if you are in the communication business or if you are in the people business. Fifth and last thing before we close today is this: avoid trying to win. You ever been in a conversation with somebody and all they want to do is one-up you? They want to win the conversation, or you're in kind of a debate or a heated dialogue and they just want to win the battle? Man, winning is not always a good thing. I mean, sometimes when you win, you actually lose. And so we need to be very careful about that. Men, let me talk to you for a minute. It is in our nature to want to win. And whether you're right or wrong, when you win, oftentimes you actually lose effective communication skills. It's better to be kind than it is to be right. It's better to be kind than it is to be right. Oftentimes women don't want to combat men or combat their husbands, and so they will just shut down. And you cannot have meaningful conversation when your spouse or the people in your office that you're leading just shut down and quit talking. I've been in meetings like that where we're having conversation and it's obvious that they're not listening. It's obvious they don't want to hear from me. It's obvious they don't want my opinions. It's obvious that they already think that they're right and they've already made a decision. These are all very negative characteristics of positive, successful, and effective communication. And I want to challenge you to hone your skills in the area of communication. To become a better leader, you need to be a better communicator. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you'll join us next time for an Accelerate session. God bless you. Have a great day.